ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. What I want to do today is to invite you to start thinking about cities not just as places where you live, but rather as entities that you interact with, that you interface with on a daily basis. So if I consider the average breathing rate of any human is 15 breaths per minute, you're approximately breathing about 20,000 times, more than 20,000 times in a single day. And every time you breathe in, for the case of Lahore, the toxic air, you're actually interfacing with the city, you're interacting with the city. Every time you drive from school to work, or school to home, or from work to home, or vice versa, you're actually interacting with the city. Every time you want to take a walk in the park, you're interacting with the city. Every time you experience a power outage, you are actually interacting with the city. And I'm sure the citizen in each and every one of you would realize that this interaction needs to improve. So there is a need for improving the sustainability or the livability of our cities, especially in Pakistan. So I want to put up some statistics here, and especially for the city of Lahore, the current state of affairs, if you will. So if I look at Lahore from 98 to 2021, the built-up area has increased a whopping 4 times. Now this growth has been unchecked, has been without planning, and leads to a significant amount of problems that we experience on a day-to-day basis. For example, one of those is the social inequity that we experience. Right next door is Chartered Pind, to maybe the people who live next to it. And there's a stark difference between the standard of living that they have and I'm guessing most of you have, right? And as we expand, that leads to longer distances, right? That means we're traveling more. With the distance that we're traveling is more. We have more cars on the road. And once again, some more statistics here. So from 2010 to 2020, if you look at statistics, the number of motorbikes on the road of Lahore has increased 3-folds. The number of cars on the roads of Lahore has increased 2-folds, and I'm pretty sure from 20 to 2025, this would probably be the same, maybe an exponential growth, if you will. And then what that leads to is what I just experienced when I was driving from LUMS all the way here. And I'm sure each one of you experience that every day, with each se khasa pe guzarte hai, right? But then more importantly, this is primarily leading to a crisis, if you will, environmental crisis, a climate crisis, a health crisis. So this is an actual screenshot that I took, most likely, if I'm not mistaken, in November 2024, where the AQI in the city of Lahore was 910, what's the safe limit? The safe limit is 50, right? So anything below 50 is good. And we were at 910. So the concentration of PM 2.5 was 106 times what WHO specifies as a safe limit. Now what does that do? Each and every one of you have actually lost 7 years of life while living in the city of Lahore. Those are studies from the University of Chicago. And I can go on and on about the statistics. But the reason why I'm putting this up here, let's face it, yes, it is to alarm you. It is to alarm you, but more importantly, to alarm you to take an action, right? So वो क्या कहते हैं कि if you are not part of the solution, you are the problem, right? So based on this or motivated by this, about 3 or 4 years ago, we sat down together and said, okay, how could we use our expertise as technologists to try to address some of these problems? And we identified that the 21st century technologies such as data science and AI, those are crucial enablers of something we call evidence-based planning or sustainable urban development. And 3 years ago, lo and behold, city was born. My name is Momin, as I was introduced, and I lead the Center for Urban Informatics, Technology and Policy at LUMS, which is also called City at LUMS, as we fondly call it. If we were to ask you what it is, we say we are the agents of urban change. We are a multidisciplinary collective who try to integrate data, artificial intelligence, technology with policy and engagement with relevant stakeholders, particularly in the public sector. we are multidisciplinary in the sense that this does not just include us as technologists, as engineers, but rather also computer scientists, data scientists, public health experts, of course, urban planners, transport engineers, and the list goes on and on. And so when we started out about 3 years ago, it's about 3 or 4 years ago, one of the first things we realized was any decision that we want to make, any change that you want to bring about needs data. And arguably, one of the most important data points that you need are something called the population density map. And for those of you who can see this clearly or not, I mean, this is the population density map of continental Europe. And the spikes that you see are proportional to the number of people living in that area. So jahan pe spikes zyada hai, that means there are more people living there versus where there are no spikes, right? And arguably, this is the first thing you need for any urban planning decisions that you need to make or services that you need to provide. And we said, okay, we want to work in Lahore, let's start finding out the population density map of the city of Lahore. We started looking for it, and this is what we found. Kyun saath nazar aa raha hai? Right? This is exactly what we found. There's nothing there. There's no portal that I can go in as a researcher, download the population density map, or anybody else who's worked on it, who can provide me with a good, accurate population density map. And that's the problem that we face day in and day out, is the unavailability of good quality data. So we said, okay, let's start working on this. This is the first thing we started to work on. We said, why don't we try to build this population density map using AI? So it's just an example of how we did it, right? So we look at the imagery of Lahore from the satellite. And from the satellite, our AI models can now pick up where the buildings are. So these boxes that you see are AI models where we picked up, okay, this is a building, and so on and so forth. And then we use this as a proxy for the population density. The more the buildings in a certain area, right, we say that the number of people living there are proportional to it. I know there are going to be problems with this, but the proportion to this. So that we use this as a proxy. And just to give you some graphics here, this is DHA phase 5 right next door in 2010. This is DHA phase 5 in 2020. So each dot that you see is actually a building. So in this 10 years, this has how much DHA phase 5 has grown. And then we said, yeah, all these buildings, I mean, some of these buildings are shops, some of these buildings are pharmacies. People don't live there, right? So we want to filter them out, and we extracted this data set as well from crowdsourced maps such as Google Maps, identified where each and every one of these points of interest, they're called, are located. For example, the pharmacies, the banks, the shops, and so on and so forth. And each of these points that you see are actually generated from our scraping. And then we exclude this from our analysis and then do some magic with technology, which of course I'm not going to go into. And this is what we get. So just to orient you, this is Lahore, by the way. This is another way to look at Lahore. And the mountains that you see are where people live. So anybody has any idea where we are at this moment, and as far as the map is concerned? We are somewhere over here, right? So this is DHA, right? And this mountain range that you see is actually the original Lahore, right? And that's where most of the people live, as far as the density is concerned, right? But more worryingly, I mean, Lahore is expanding. You now start seeing people here, and so that's called the horizontal growth, right? But nevertheless, so this is a map that we created using technology. We set about creating more data sets. For example, road network in Canada. If you want to go, a portal hai, you can just download the road networks for any city. Pakistan with this does not exist. We created that as well, once again through AI. And so armed with these data sets, such as, for example, the population density map, we said, okay, now let's try to derive some insights and present to stakeholders. For example, the Punjab Mass Transit Authority. So that's the first analysis we presented to them. How many of you have ever used a public transport in Lahore? One? Actually, I have not, right? I mean, this is significantly higher than I expected. And I would have wanted this to be a lot more. I would have wanted to use a public transport. But then we went about to see what the access to public transport is. So what you see here, this is the green line, which is a metro Jangla bus, if you will, right? The orange line and then the blue dots or the blue lines are the feeder routes, and each one of the dots that you see is actually a stop, right? So we marked this manually on the map, and then we said about, okay, let's try to estimate how many people can access a public transit stop within 5 minutes of walking. How many people can access a public transport stop in the city of Lahore within 5 minutes of walking? What percentage do you think can access a public transport stop? I mean, DHA में बिल्कुल नहीं कर सकते, right? So 5 minutes of walking, our estimate, once again, using those data sets that we developed, just 15%, right? If I increase that to 10 minutes of walking, that's 30%. 15 minutes of walking in the sun, or abhi to theek hai, right? That's 40%, right? So that tells us about the state of affairs as far as, once again, using the data sets we generated, and you can do a lot of other things now. Where do we need to place the public transport routes, right? Where the usages are, where the people live. You can make all of those decisions using some of these data sets that we've generated. Now, with the data set that we generated, I mean, word got out, and we're very lucky to have formed partnerships all across the province of Punjab in particular. So this is not a complete list. So this includes LWMC, for example, जो आपके कूड़ा उठाते हैं लाहौर में, Trans Karachi or Punjab City Authority, and most recently with RUDA as well as with EPA, which is Environmental Protection Agency. And I don't have time to go over all of those, how we created impact, but I'm just going to list two organizations that we work with. The first one is a Lahore Waste Management Company. We started working with them a few years ago. Once again, used AI to optimize how they collect trash, from where and when, so as to improve or save fuel costs. And this is them saying this. We're not saying this. I mean, they did the study. So using this AI, they claim they save 150,000 liters of fuel every month, just using simple routing that we've done, right? We also work very closely with 1122. So this is them in our lab, where we're training them how to use technology to identify where the road traffic hotspots are. So we can identify, we have the data set, we work with the data sets, we know where the pedestrians are most vulnerable, where the bikes are most vulnerable, where the most fatalities are, and using this analysis that can lead to a better routing of, or allocation of their resources, which are limited, let's say. I mean, we have to admit it, we have limited resources, and we want to work with the best we can. I'm going to conclude with just putting up something. So we've recently launched our City Atlas, which is a visual summary of the 3 years of our work in maps, a visual narrative, if you will. You can go through that QR code. There's a flip book there. Phones pe bahut zyada sahi shayad nazar na aaye. I mean, you'd have to have a laptop for that. You're also very, very welcome to follow us on LinkedIn. We're very, very active there. Every update that we have, we post it on LinkedIn. Just go search City at LUMS. I'm not sure if any of you are on LinkedIn. Like the adults maybe are, right? Not that you're not adults, right? So everybody's adult, right? And with us, I thank you.